Hi, my name is Flora. I am a supervising social worker in Cumbria for community foster care. So I considered social work basically during lockdown, I think. I was furloughed from my previous job. It really gave me some time to really reflect on what was important to me, what bits of my previous roles in other careers that I really enjoyed and valued, and that was working with people directly, being, I guess, of service to people and giving back. So I came to CFC having just completed my Masters in Social Work in August 2022. This was my first qualified role as a social worker. The role appealed to me because during my qualification it felt very clear that there was a choice to be made as a student social worker where you either work with adults or you work with children. But my interest has been working with both. So I was really looking for a role that combined a family approach to social work, and someone introduced me to the idea of a supervising social worker, so a social worker who works with foster carers in their support of children who they foster. And I really loved that idea, the idea that I was a social worker detached from the role of the child social worker, but really bridging that gap between the foster carers and that local authority role. And it's been a fantastic opportunity for me to focus on providing support for adults, but for adults who are supporting vulnerable children. It's been complex and interesting and at times really challenging to get the balance right between being able to have open and honest conversations with carers about what care looks like and what the young person or the child needs, how that child will have experienced trauma, and how that therefore impacts a carer's ability to deliver that care for the child. And I think the most interesting part of my role is helping them to support children and love them as we would expect a parent to, but also helping them understand that they are what we'd call a professional parent. They are a professional, and helping them navigate the fact that they don't have parental responsibility for these children, but are delegated that responsibility. So it's a really complex situation where on one hand we're expecting them to, I guess, claim these children as their own, and we're looking for long-term foster carers who will see these children through into adult life, but at the same time reminding them that their role is a professional role and there are regulations and limits to that. I think what attracted me to work for CFC was the fact that it's a very small, friendly charity where you really get a chance to, I guess, work quite intensely with carers. So when I was going through my training, it became quite clear to me quite early on that I wasn't necessarily interested in working for the local authority. Not because they don't do excellent work, I know they do, but the pressure and the turnover of staff, but also a social worker's role in a family's life feels very different. Whereas at community foster care, it was clear that when you joined this agency, you were very much seen and given the time to get to know these families, which is entirely appropriate and required for this kind of role. You have to develop relationships with these families before you can suggest changes or challenge. So that was what attracted me to a position like the supervising social worker role at community foster care. That felt like the type of social work I wanted to be involved in. I would say my best experience from a professional point of view, so obviously I'm newly qualified, so I'm always looking to develop my professional practice, has been the introduction of the therapeutic reflective practice groups that we do monthly. They're a fascinating opportunity for the social workers and support workers to get together, bring a scenario and really unpack it as a team with a psychotherapist who sits and facilitates that group for us. It's been amazing because I've learnt loads about what I bring to the role, I guess what triggers me in certain situations, and then also being able to support other social workers and support workers from a therapeutic angle as well. On that same theme, also having therapeutic sessions with the carers, what we've learned about trauma and how trauma informs most behaviours we see in the children we support has been fascinating and really enlightening. So seeing those moments for carers has been a real privilege, and to watch them I guess, just join the dots for a child, because so many young people who come into CFC have such complex histories that we don't necessarily have all the information about. Seeing carers be dedicated to join those dots for children and think about their behaviour and how their behaviour is completely attached to their previous experiences of trauma or their development from birth is really fascinating, and it helps us to understand where the child is coming from. So watching and supporting carers on that journey has been pretty fantastic, really, and it feels like it's a very unique approach that CFC offer. I think one of the areas that has been a challenge from a CFC perspective is that we are a very small agency, which has so many positives and makes it very much feel like a family. But with that comes some responsibility for the social workers to take on quite a lot. We do have a really close-knit team, but one of our strengths is that we also work across the whole of the north of England and then obviously down into Gloucester. So sometimes that face-to-face interaction is difficult to navigate when most of it is happening online, which is really beneficial because obviously since COVID we've all learned how to adapt to that way of working. But I would wonder if you were new to a role like this, if that also felt like a challenge. But what it has given me is an opportunity to really appreciate those moments when I am working face-to-face with colleagues and really make the most of those times that we do have together. I definitely don't take them for granted when I do get to see them. I think the thing I would like to have known as a social work student is that these roles exist. So often we focus our training on statutory provisions in either adult or children's social work, but knowing that there is a whole host of roles within the charity sector which would benefit from a social worker is really valuable information to be aware of. I can't remember being told much about the role of a supervising social worker until I saw that this role was available. So it kind of felt like it had been a role completely designed for me because I was looking for something like this. I wanted to work in the charity sector and I wanted to combine my interest in working with children and adults and really focus on a family approach to social work. So in that regard, I think I would have benefited from knowing that this role existed and knowing that it's integral to help foster placements remain stable. I think this role has been fascinating. It's my first role out of university, so obviously it felt very big and scary at times and overwhelming, but that's to be expected in most roles where you're newly qualified. But it's been such an opportunity for me to really understand how trauma works, and I think that's quite unique to this agency. The amount of work we do around therapeutic parenting and understanding how trauma informs the actions of our children is fascinating and feels very unique. I don't know many of my colleagues who are in other agencies or in local authority if they have been privileged enough to develop that understanding and that detailed work with other professionals around trauma that I know will benefit me throughout my working career. So I'd say the most unique part of this year has been understanding and really getting to appreciate how trauma works.